Good morning. It's the 9th of September 2023. We're at Cantini, and this is the 2nd Virginia Regiment.
Hi everyone, I'm Alan Okerlander of the 2nd Virginia Regiment, and today I have my British military blunderbuss to demonstrate. A blunderbuss is an invention of German gunsmiths. The word blunderbuss translates roughly to thunder gun, and that's sort of what it sounds like when you touch it off and fire it. It's an 18th century version of what we would call a sawed-off shotgun. It fires a dozen or more buckshot with a charge of powder. Now, this one has a brass barrel, and this is actually a reproduction of a British military blunderbuss made in 1777. And to load, it has it's sometimes called a carriage gun too, because the civilians would carry them in a boot underneath the front seat of a carriage. Especially in England, where they had a lot of problems with highwaymen, this was considered a very formidable weapon to look down the muzzle of that, so it was a good deterrent for highwaymen that might try and rob you. You have to remember they didn't have traveler's checks and charge cards like we do today. You had to carry your cash with you, and that made you a prime target for thieves. In any event, the British military very quickly caught on to the fact that a short weapon like this that fired like a shotgun would be useful for a lot of things, and consequently they adopted them for the British military. It was particularly fond of the Navy, however. They used those a lot. And it said in the British Navy, the regulations were for every ship, for every 13 cannons on a ship, they had to have one blunderbuss. And the British never adopted a particular pattern, a standard pattern like they did for the Brown Bess for their blunderbusses. Instead, it seems as though if the ship's captain needed a blunderbuss, he went to a gunsmith, and they were frequently made up from parts. This one has a 1777 lock and a little earlier muzzle, and a common configuration for the walnut stock. If you like brass, this is the thing to have, I think. I enjoy brass, so it shines very nice, as you can probably see. In any event, the Navy preferred brass barrels because brass won't rust like steel, so there's a little less maintenance to it. And it was a handy thing for shore parties, but particularly during the Revolution and in that period, the object wasn't to sink the enemy ship, the object was to capture the enemy ship. Because if you could capture it, you could take it into harbor, and it would be sold at public vendue. That is to say, at a public auction. And for whatever money was raised from that auction, everyone from the captain down to the most humble ship's boy would receive a percentage of the sale of the ship and its cargo. So if you can capture a ship that has maybe 10 tons worth of shoes or grain or something like that, it could be quite profitable. So you didn't try and sink the enemy, you tried to capture their ship. And that meant at some point you had to draw alongside and then board the enemy ship. And this was an excellent weapon for resisting boarding parties. Sailors or Marines were quite often sent up into the rigging to fire down on the decks of the enemy ship as it drew near. And in the Army, it was used to guard the payroll, and it was also used to guard prisoners, and it was popular with some British officers too. Ethan Allen of the Green Mountain Boys carried a blunderbuss in battle, and so too did Benedict Arnold. In any event, we load it and fire it by pulling the cock back to the half-cock position, which is the safety position. We're going to pour a little gunpowder on the flash pan right there, and then we'll close the frizzen on top of it so the gunpowder won't fall off. Then we reverse the blunderbuss and we pour more gunpowder down the barrel, and then we put in a handful of cloth wadding, and we're going to shove that down the barrel with our ramrod, just like that. We'll pack it in nice and tight. and we withdraw it and put it back so we don't lose it. And then we're going to pour in a dozen or more buckshot. Now, the mythology is that people put nails, old nails, and scrap iron door hinges and things like that in it. The National Rifle Association wondered if that was true or not, so they examined all of the blunderbusses in the museums in the United States, Canada, and some in Europe as well, and found that the bores looked very good. Now, a soft brass barrel like this would score badly if you tried to shoot nails or hit door hinges out of it. So they have concluded that that was a myth, that they didn't use scrap iron. Instead, they used lead balls, just like muskets did. So we pour a dozen of those down, and then we put another handful of wadding in it. We could also use tow, too, which is the scrap of making linen cloth. And we'll pack that down on top of the shot so it won't fall out when we point the barrel downwards. And now we're all set to fire the weapon. When we see something to shoot at, we draw the hammer, the cock back to the full cock position. When I squeeze the trigger, the cock is going to rotate forward, and you'll notice that there is a piece of flint in the jaws of the cock. Flint is actually harder than steel. And when it strikes the frizzen here, it's going to shave off just a little bit of metal, which will be very hot, red-hot sparks from the friction. And at the same time, the cock is going to push the frizzen forward, exposing the flash pan. Sparks will fall in the flash pan, igniting the flash pan. The flame will burn through the little tiny hole you see there called the vent, and that will ignite the gunpowder in the barrel, and boom, all the shot and wadding will go down the barrel in a big cloud of smoke. Now, there's another myth is that the shape of the muzzle or the fact that it's flared made the shot spread out, and that is not true either. The barrel is straight until it gets about here, and then it flares out. The reason it has a flare to it was to make the weapon easier to load if you're riding a horse or on a carriage or on the pitching deck of a ship. It's a lot easier to get gunpowder and shot and wadding down a bigger barrel like that. Something of a funnel shape or trumpet shape. My experience firing this weapon is that at 40 yards, it will very consistently put all 12 buckshot in a circle about this big around.
So at the age of 16, or whenever you become...
So that's our British military blunderbuss. Hope you enjoyed your
By the time you're 16
visit.
years old,
Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.